Hello! It's been a while, and look, I've turned on some kind of cartoon. Yes, I've got a new phone, and new phone means new fancy technology. And new fancy technology means playing with cameras, and playing with cameras makes me think, maybe I should record something for the people out there in the land of the internet, although it is actually quite freakish, looking at this recording with my kind of comic booky face going, it's putting in strange creases that I'm not entirely sure I'm entirely convinced by. I also used the word entirely there twice, which is never a good sign. Anyway, I thought I'd tell you a little amusing story about adventures in copy editing. So I have a chapter coming out in a book, which comes out late this year, early next year. It's so hard to know with books as to when you submit something, when you submit proofs, as to when the book is going to come out. Also, I use the word copy edit there and coming out twice as well. So I'm just overusing words at the moment. I'm in the midst of marking essays, so I'm kind of procrastinating and trying to find a way to use up time. Part of using up time apparently is talking about how I'm using words too often. I'm just missing the point entirely. Anyway, so I was sent the proofs of my book chapter, which is a book chapter on David Icke, Alex Jones, and whether we should consider them as being typical conspiracy theorists or notable conspiracy theorists, which is part of my general riff on what I call the thesis of conspiracism. This notion that we can identify problematic conspiracy theorists in society, condemn those conspiracy theorists, and then go, well, that's it for conspiracy theories. And I'm sure if you've been following my work, you know exactly what I think of arguments of that particular type. Anyway, I get this chapter back, and in describing some of the views of Alex Jones, I mention the fact that Alex Jones has said in the past that Michelle Obama is a trans woman, because Alex Jones and a bunch of other people on, let's say, the alt-right, it seems like a useful term to describe some of their views, have this notion that Michelle Obama is secretly a man. They also, some of them think that Barack Obama is secretly a woman, which does lead to a rather interesting situation of believing that Michelle Obama and Barack Obama are a married couple of a man and a woman, each of whom is pretending to be the other, but that's another matter entirely. And the copy editor had, I'm going to put helpfully here in quote marks, changed that to Michelle Obama is a transgender woman, open parentheses, a biological male, close parentheses. This raised my hackles ever so slightly, because as someone who is non-binary, I'm not particularly au fait with this notion of biological essentialism, which kind of goes into this kind of trans activism conspiracy that people talk about, which is trying to claim that women are women because they produce gametes, men are men because they produce sperm, or women are women because they're XX, and men are men because they're XY. Anyway, it's a rather complicated story, and in philosophy it's really quite contentious. And this is a book coming out in a philosophy range, and I was going, this is not good. This is actually not something which I personally or philosophically support, the parentheses of a biological male. And if you want to know why that's a problematic stance, there's quite a lot of literature going on in philosophy, particularly in philosophy of gender and feminist philosophy, about the so-called TERF debate, trans exclusionary radical feminists, who have this particular view of biological essentialism and gender performativity, which is problematic and been largely debated by people who do this work professionally, and they've gone to quite some lengths to point out why biological essentialism isn't a very good way to talk about gender, because gender and sex should be considered as separate concepts. Anyway, I send a letter off to the editor of the volume going, I'm not signing my contract until such time this gets fixed and returned back to my original wording. And of course and that should be the case, because no matter what you think about the debate about trans people in philosophy or society in general, whether you believe in biological essentialism or you don't, The descriptor, Michelle Obama is a trans woman, not that I'm endorsing that, that's what Alex Jones has described Michelle Obama as being in the past, actually stands on its own and doesn't need any parenthetical comment. So it's going, we don't need this, and also it's philosophically contentious and goes against my own personal views, so we should probably get rid of it. Sorry, where was I? I was disturbed by what I thought was an intruder in the house, but turned out to be nothing of the sort. When you're a conspiracy theory theorist, you have to be cautious at all times about what's going on around you, especially when you're a clumsy conspiracy theory theorist like myself, whose spatial awareness is probably not the best thing in the world. So yes, previously, when I was recording this little segment, I was talking about the whole trans woman thing. And so I contacted the editor, saying I wasn't going to sign the contract unless this was reverted. And the editor was very apologetic and said, this wasn't us, this was the copy editor at the publisher. And we promise we'll put things back as they were originally, no problems there. But because of this particular issue of the copy editor, I then spent a day reading and rereading my chapter, checking it against the original text to see what other small differences might have crept in. And there was one which initially seemed a bit odd, but then when I discussed it with a friend, seemed like something which was actually almost ominous. So in the latter part of the chapter, I discuss the Moscow show trials, and I point out that just as Stalin believed there was a large-scale conspiracy against him being led by Leon Trotsky to return power back to Trotsky and his sympathizers, which, when the proto-KGB discovered there was no evidence for them, Stalin just demanded they create the evidence anyway. So in that discussion, I just mentioned that Stalin thought that Leon Trotsky was conspiring against him, and the copy editor had changed that to say that Leon Trotsky and Adolf Hitler had conspired against him. Now, this seemed like a odd thing. I mean, I'm not an expert on Soviet conspiracy theories. I know my stuff, but it's quite possible there are people out there who really do believe that it was a conspiracy by Trotsky and Hitler. It's also quite possible that maybe Stalin believed that as well. But it seems like an odd thing to add in. As a helpful copy editor, what I wrote wasn't strictly wrong, even if it turns out that Stalin did suspect Hitler was involved. The main issue with the Moscow trials was trying to uncover a plot by Trotsky. So adding in this additional fact, factoid, factlet, or false fact doesn't really change the story at all. Now, I noted this in the report I took back about the proofs, that this needed to be changed as well. But then I went out drinking with some friends later that night, and as my friend Steve pointed out, both of these things taken together are a little bit suspicious. It almost sounds as if the copy editor is a little bit right-wing. Talking about the biological male thing, which is a conservative talking point when it comes to trans identity in current political spaces, and also mixing in your socialists with your national socialists, sounds like the kind of thing that certain people on the alt-right or the conservative end of the political spectrum want to consolidate or conflate together. Now, I'm not saying that this copy editor is right-wing, or indeed working with a right-wing agenda, but it is suggestive that maybe the copy editor was putting a political slant into their copy edit whether they were aware of it or not. And of course this is quite problematic when you're dealing with someone who's talking about conspiracy theories and conspiracy theory, because it makes them slightly paranoid that the copy editor has done other things to their text which have not been identified, which then might mean that the author in question, myself, is going to be beholden to claims made by a copy editor I didn't spot in the proofing process, which is why I wasted most of an afternoon reading and rereading that chapter, comparing notes and the like, trying to make sure that what I wrote is what's going to appear in the book, as opposed to what the copy editor is trying to make me say. So that's an update for one thing I've been doing. There have been a multitude of things I've been doing since last I broadcast, some of which I'm hoping to be able to talk about very, very soon. And like all promissory notes, where you'll be hearing more from me in the coming weeks, it's quite possible that months will go by before another broadcast appears, although now the teaching part of the semester is over, maybe I'll have more time for a bit of video hijinkeries. I do have planned. Indeed, I've even got a mostly completed script for what was meant to be the next episode of Conspiracism. But, as certain YouTubers might say, like Techmoan, that's enough from me. Bye for now.